Hello, everybody, and welcome. AEGIS and Drummond are joining here today with our new partnership to introduce the Payer and Patient Access API Testing and Certification Program. I'm Sandy Vance, the Director of Health IT for AEGIS.net, and I have with me here Timothy Bennett, the Director of Strategic Healthcare Initiatives from the Drummond Group. Today, we want to talk to you about your journey to CMS final rule compliance, the Drummond Payer and Patient Access FHIR certification program that is now underway with our pilot, and the AEGIS Touchstone FHIR tooling for complete product lifecycle testing. I'm going to turn it over to my partner, Tim.
Thanks, Sandy. With the May 2020 publication of the CMS Patient Access and Interoperability Final Rule, health plans subject to that rule's enforcement provisions began a journey to compliance that has these common waypoints. First, each payer must make a decision whether they're going to build a compliance system or they're going to buy one, or maybe even perhaps a mix of the two. But regardless of the payer's choice, there is persistent confusion in the marketplace on what exactly does it mean to be compliant to the final rule. And the FHIR implementation guides that the CMS final rule references. And that includes specifying what is in scope for compliance and what's out of scope, since these IGs have shoulds and shalls and mays and other things like that that standards have. But regardless of the outcome of this build versus buy decision, payers will most likely perform some form of testing of their implementation. The extent of the testing performed correlates to the risk, mitigation, that the payer will have with their system. And then, after the compliance system is initially deployed in the real world, the next big question remains is, how will the payer maintain compliance of that system over time? Systems are, like all software systems, are modified and changed over time. And even the FHIR implementation guides will certainly change over time as they evolve and become more mature. And CMS will certainly, add additional regulatory changes as they have already proposed to do. So the big takeaway here is that compliance is not just some one-time event that happens, but an activity that should permeate every aspect of the life cycle of the system. Now, systems that have been independently certified as compliant can help payers and their solution providers navigate this journey to compliance, which should be this ongoing and pervasive attention to compliance. So a certification program helps stakeholders know what capabilities have been implemented by a system that claims to be compliant to the CMS regulations. And like we said before, practically everyone will perform some kind of testing of their system, but unless everyone performs the same level and type of testing, there's no guarantee everyone interprets the standards, the IGs and the regulations in the same way. And there's certainly no guarantee that interoperability will just magically happen. There needs to be a consistent and calibrated set of tests as a common denominator for compliance. A certification program of compliance also gives payers and other stakeholders confidence that the system is safe and secure in their implementation of FHIR APIs that expose patient data to smart device applications. It also gives payers an independent voice that confirms compliant claims by developers and implementers. And ultimately, it helps payers mitigate their risk of being subject to CMS enforcement provisions if they happen to have a non-compliant system. So to this end, Drummond Group, in conjunction with our technology partner at AEGIS, has launched a testing and certification program for the FHIR APIs referenced in the CMS Patient Access and Interoperability Final Rule. And this program uses the Touchstone FHIR testing platform to verify that developers are compliant. Our program assists in your roadmap to compliance by giving you access to policy and technical experts, and to access an industry-leading testing tool platform that can integrate into the core of a developer's test-driven development methodology, so that compliance can be baked into every aspect of the product lifecycle. Our program also establishes an independent certification seal of compliance, which is backed by an unmatched industry credibility and experience as a respected health IT assessor, and establishes a publicly available list of certified products to inform and guide the marketplace. Our program also ensures that access to support from the experts and tools carries on beyond certification, so that organizations can mitigate their risk of noncompliance in the reality of regulatory standards and product changes. Drummond and AEGIS represents the best of both worlds. Respective industry leaders, both helping organizations perform comprehensive FHIR testing and achieving certification to standards and regulatory regulations for over 20 years. Drummond is both an ISO 17025 accredited test lab and an ISO 17065 accredited certification body, and responsible for over 80% of ONC certified health IT products. With AEGIS, organizations have access to the FHIR testing experts that built IG validation test scripts alongside the development of the FHIR implementation guides, and their platform is used at connectathons and various testing events within the FHIR community. So Drummond's Payer and Patient Access FHIR certification program has both a Drummond certified seal of compliance along with achievement badges that correspond to the FHIR implementation guides that are referenced in the CMS final rules. So, this graphic shows the timelines of compliance to the CMS final rule, but it also talks about, the various different FHIR implementation guides, and we have a badge for each one of those. So for Patient Access API, the Karen for Blue Button claims and encounter data has a certification badge that participants can obtain. Same with Patient Access Drug Formulary and the patient clinical data that aligns with US Core and US CDI. Also the Provider Directory API, Payer-to-Payer Data Exchange, and the proposed APIs for prior authorization and burden reduction, along with FHIR implementation guides around event notifications as well. So at Drummond Group with AEGIS, we intend to cover the bases on the FHIR implementation guides that CMS is recommending and requiring in their final rules. So who should certify to this program that the Drummond and AEGIS have launched? Well, any of the Medicare and Medicaid health plans that are called out in the CMS final rules should certainly certify to this program, and any solution providers that are building and selling compliance systems into the payer marketplace, for this purpose as well. But we will also suggest that private health plans that aren't necessarily subject to the CMS final rule compliance provisions should also strongly consider certification, because there's much benefit to implementing FHIR APIs for patient provider access, for reduction of provider and payer burden, and as well as the benefits for just aligning with both ONC and CMS National Health IT Interoperability Strategy. Now, I'm now going to turn over the remainder of the presentation to my colleague, Sandy Vance, who will go over the design of the certification program and do a deep dive into the Touchstone FHIR testing platform and its benefits and value as a staple of test-driven development. Sandy?
Thanks, Tim. So what really makes this program so different from other certification programs is the way that we've designed the process and the tooling that's included when you come to Drummond to test with this program. So it starts out with this pre-test support provided by Drummond. And so you'll get all of their regulatory and compliance expertise to aid you in understanding the rules and what you need to do. You also get access to the technology, the Touchstone FHIR testing platform, in order to do that test-driven development all along the way. So from the very beginning of your build, you can start validating that you're conformant to the standard and to the implementation guides to ensure that you're doing it right from the beginning. And that's going to really speed up your development process. And we'll talk about more on that in a moment. Once you've basically mastered the implementation guide and got it implemented, Drummond will review those results and grant that certification seal and your badges of compliance. And then the beauty of the Touchstone tool is that you can do ongoing compliance monitoring as you're making changes or releasing new functionality within your application. You just come back to Touchstone, run those tests, and then you can have those results to demonstrate that you're staying compliant. And then the retesting, of course, is annually or any time you make a substantive change to your software. We would ask that you retest. So that's sort of the process for ongoing conformance monitoring to make sure that you are compliant to the regulatory rules. So on the next slide, the FHIR testing framework exists within the specification to really make sure that everyone is doing conformance in the same way. And so there's not a lot of ambiguity in the FHIR specification. It's a platform specification, and this built-in methodology for the FHIR specification is used to validate that interoperability across FHIR server and client implementations exists. And how the FHIR specification defines that are through two primary resources. One is the FHIR test script resource, which represents an executable test definition for examining the results of the RESTful API interaction. So those functions like get, put, etc. The testing resource, the FHIR testing resource, then demonstrates how test engines should follow a prescribed workflow to validate implementation guides. And so if you are validating the FHIR specification with any other method, that is not conformant with the FHIR specification. And so the Touchstone platform has been built with this FHIR testing framework in mind. And basically, this is how we support the evaluation of all of those operations and extensible conditions, as well as the asserts within the implementation guide, which are something that a lot of methods of testing will miss. So Touchstone is basically an open access, internet-based validation platform, and this allows you to test on your own time with a publicly accessible cloud-based platform. We know lots of coders and developers work whatever hours, but that's okay. Touchstone is always out there and ready to go because it's cloud-based. It enables us to be available. It keeps you from having to download anything or make updates to your test tool. It's just there and ready to go. It really cuts down on development costs by using test-driven development, by teaching people how to use FHIR from requirements through user acceptance testing. It's really got a great amount of feedback so that you can see how your code matches up to the spec. We improve efficiency of all testing processes by giving you ready-to-use tests that confirm those CMS requirements, and use of Touchstone's wildfire servers or your own test servers. Either one can be validated against these. You can also report your progress to clients with suites that logically group those CMS tests together in those badges that Tim was talking about by IG to allow for conformance reporting and publishing via permalink. So I'm going to show you that in just a moment. So the whole idea here behind using the Touchstone platform is to give you a seamless glide path to this Drummond certification seal as part of your market differentiation strategy. And you can use it from the time you start out transitioning to FHIR all the way up until you're bona fide certified through the Drummond program. So using Touchstone for test-driven development, for those of you who don't know, the idea behind test-driven development is to sort of start by doing a little bit of development against a specification or implementation guide, and then validating that little piece of it, and then developing the next piece and putting those tests together, small unit tests, run the small unit tests and run it along with the previous unit tests together so that you can validate a whole workflow. And so Touchstone is built with that in mind, again, so that you can use it from beginning to end of your development cycle. It provides on-the-job training for your developers to use FHIR, so they don't have to know the whole specification inside out and backwards. That's what the Drummond experts are there for. That's what the Touchstone experts are there for. The Touchstone folks build these base FHIR tests and workflow tests for FHIR implementation guides to meet regulatory requirements so that you don't have to deep dive into those specs. You simply come to the platform and you'll get that feedback on your code to know that it's compliant. So Touchstone provides detailed and immediate feedback on the FHIR code, and I will show that to you in just a moment. It also lowers the cost of development by pointing out to you the non-conformant pieces of your code prior to the formal testing process. So before you get in a room with the Drummond folks to show them that you can certify, you can actually run those tests yourself and see your results, share them with your boss, share them with your clients, so that everyone knows exactly where you're at in this conformance process. So now I want to show you the Touchstone platform and just give you a little taste of how it works. One of the great things about Touchstone is that it supports peer-to-peer validation, peer-to-peer testing, with validation. And so when you bring up this test setup screen, you can actually set up your test to run from your system to a reference implementation, whether it's one of the Da Vinci reference implementations or AEGIS' Wildfire or one of the Inferno reference implementations. They're all in there and ready to go and run against those test scripts that are in there and ready for you to go. So basically you just select your new test setup from the definitions list and you can enter any variables. In this case, you can see it's a valid patient resource ID that would be on your server, and then you select execute. And when you get to the next screen, what you'll see is that the test execution will appear and automatically refresh as your test runs. And once completed, you basically select either the test script execution hyperlink or the status hyperlink to get to those test details. And on the next screen, you see that the test execution details are displayed. So each of these tests has been run, and they can be further introspected by using the test name or the status hyperlink. So if you click on the far left column where it says test name, you would go into the details of that. And if you go into the test status, like here where it shows you that they passed, you'll see on the next screen that clicking there will actually show you those test execution details, and they give information on all of those operations and asserts that are run. They give information on the connectivity or authorization problems that can be, problematic within between two systems. Sometimes I wish I would have used a test that failed miserably so you could see, but what it does is it actually points out to you all of the failed results would be in red, anything that's a warning that may be a recommended but not a required action. So it really drills down into a very deep level of detail, which gives your developer the expertise they need without having to go back and read the FHIR spec on FHIR.org. It just runs, it just validates, and it gives them the breadcrumbs they need to fix their code. On the next slide, you'll see our Touchstone results dashboard. So this is basically going to give you verification of all of the standards conformance against the FHIR specification, against the implementation guide, or any profiles that you're using. And as we all know, because FHIR is an evolving standard, just like all of the standards have this challenge, right? You go from version to version, and R4, of course, was the first normative version, but we'll soon be on R5. And at that point, you're going to want to be able to share with your customers by publishing through a permalink that you have validated against that version of the specification. What's really cool about these sort of Starship conformance results dials is that you can click on specific areas of them. And if you were looking at the bottom of the page in Touchstone, you'd be able to scroll down and see specifically what test scripts each of those represent. So it's a really easy way for you to be able to just publish a permalink. You take the URL, put it into an email, and send it to either your client or your colleagues that you're trying to share information with, or the Drummond team, so that they can help you manage what you need to do next for the FHIR certification. So Touchstone, as I've said, is really meant as a tool for the entire product lifecycle. And with this program, you will get Touchstone access from the beginning when you start doing your build, all the way up through your certification process. The hallmarks of this product are that it decreases the cost of interoperability with FHIR. Basically, that's done by simplifying all of these complex specification requirements. As I said, keep your developers off of the FHIR.org site and digging through mounds and mounds of specification details, and just send them here so they can do the things that you need in that in-flight code testing so that they can develop as quickly as possible your solutions. And then that validation, of course, ensures interoperability with other systems by either validating the peer-to-peer testing or validating it against those reference implementations. Ensuring that code or procured systems meet regulatory timelines. Of course, as I was saying, these shareable results to show your customers or your colleagues or the Drummond group that you are conformant. Third-party IVNB gives your compliance officers a sense of assurance and something that they can point to demonstrate that you are meeting the requirements of the final rule. And then certifying for market differentiation. So your marketing people will be thrilled with you to get this seal of approval and be able to share that with the world so that they know that you are one of the first to be conformant with those interoperability rules. So really, this program, again, gives you ongoing access to the Touchstone platform. The whole point is to provide a glide path to certification that's going to help you out from the very beginning of your development lifecycle on to when you start iterating into future software versions, and then enabling you to stay up to date, because we're going to keep those test scripts up to date for you as the AEGIS progress. No need to download updates or change your own test scripts. Those test scripts are evergreen. We're going to put them in there and keep them updated so that you can log into Touchstone at any time and know that you're testing against the most recent version of those test script definitions. So at this point, we'll open it up to questions. And I just want to let you know that if you would like any more information about this program, please visit www.drummondgroup.com/compliance/FHIR, or contact Tim or I. We're always happy to talk about the program. Thanks, everybody. Have a great day.
Thank you.